We'll continue on, guys. Before we do that, though, if you've been enjoying this content, hit that follow button. Hit that follow button. Make sure notifications are on, so you know I'm going live. We do this all the time, 6-7 days a week. We do this, right? So we want you to be a part of this community. Hit that follow button, especially on social and chat. For our social media, we got Twitter, where we tweet things, right? I forgot to tweet things today, but it's okay. With Discord, Hearts of the community, please be a part of our Discord. Jump in, have conversations with us, either in voice like this or in text channels. We'd love to have you. Jump into our Discord. TikTok is where you find amusing videos from the channels. So check out our TikTok, follow the TikTok. YouTube is where you find the VODs. If you missed anything, like, comment, subscribe, consider becoming a YouTube member. Hit that join button if you enjoy getting this content 7 days a week. Okay, so moving on. Okay, second topic. On this 4th of July, holiest days, how do you feel about the promise of America? Whether it be the American dream, as you define it, or the state of the country in general. Do you think America is declining? It's a declining empire? Is that a good thing? And would you recommend that a foreigner move to the States? So, yeah, this is, I think, well, I wrote the question, so I think it's interesting. But this idea of like what America should be and whether it fails to live up to those things. We've actually touched on it with the previous topic. Yeah, like Yelp review time. Would you recommend America? All right.
So all about the Yelp reviews.
I will take Sprouticus's idea, his criticism, right? And like let a goddamn American go first, right? So
hey, there we go.
There we go. So
first of all, that was my criticism. I don't
it?
know why you can't tell us apart, right? I know all white people look the same to you, but we're different. We have different personalities, Prime. Come on.
All I know is that some people are whiter than others. Some people are actual factual Swedes.
Wait, is the order of ranking of whiteness, with Sprouticus being most white to Doobie being least? Is this how you rank us?
No, that'd have to be. It'd have to be.
For sure. Also, Prime, I got to be a lot closer to the bottom than these Canadians.
Prime, yeah. You know, this is PrimeCayes white people tier list.
Listen, Prime
right now.
Listen, Prime made me this not white because I'm Italian. He just hates Italians. Okay.
I love Italian women. All right, moving on. We have a friend. Lactoid, please.
Yeah. So ultimately, I think this is a sort of similar topic, but look, the American dream is a reflection of the principles of this country. I think we should live out these principles every day. This country's better than a lot of people give it credit for, right? This country has among the world's highest median income in the world, right? It's higher than Canada. So for the Canadians in here who are constantly shitting on America, it's just, we're better. Continues to flex its muscle in nearly every single international dispute. There's a reason why America is what the world looks to when it comes to defending the Western world and defending international democracy. My mother moved to this country and became a citizen, and I am eternally grateful. And I encourage all foreigners who share our values, our work ethic, and want to join this great project to come to this country and, hey, join us. Join us or die.
Or die. Love it. Okay. All right. Isn't America if it isn't a threat behind it? Okay. Let's go to Scott.
Yeah, so there's 4 questions here. The first one is the American dream still alive? I'll just quote George Carlin here. They call it the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it. I think it's a bit of a joke in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I think America is one of the best nations in terms of liberty in the world. I mean, there are a few places, if you have enough money, where your liberty is better, like Singapore, or like, a few places in South America where if you've got the money in the capital, it's a more free and liberating place to live. But for the average citizen, I would say America is most likely the freest nation on earth. That being said, is the American empire declining? I think that's kind of obvious, right? By 2050, CBO, before Biden administration took in, and before Trump and Biden initiated all of these massive spending payments and massive increase in M2 money supply, they already said that we were going to be $121 trillion in debt, over 200% debt to income GDP ratio, and the overwhelming majority of our debt is entitlement programs. So unless America is willing to gut and destroy Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, yeah, America is headed for a long and painful journey to the collapse of its economy, along with much of the Western world's economy along with it. And Canada's, if they don't elect Pierre Poilievre, they'll be in the same situation. Is it a good thing that the American empire is declining? Well, I don't quite know the answer to that, right? Like, would it be a good thing for American imperialism to stop happening in the Middle East? Would it be, would that be good? Well, yeah, that'd be good. But who does that mean it stops? Does China just take over at that point and start engaging in their own forms of imperialism like they're doing? I don't know that it is. I'm not a collapsitarian. I am an incrementalist. So I don't want America to fail. I want America to get better. And the way it gets better is consistently and slowly reducing its state power and giving more freedom to the market and more freedom to the people until eventually we can realize true freedom and liberty. And should a foreigner move here? Yeah, I don't understand why a foreigner should move here. I would say, if you have our values, you should move here. Or if you just want a job, and I think America should do more to allow companies and NGOs to sponsor immigrants and co-sign for them to bring them in as much as people want. I'm not an open borders libertarian, but I'm a private borders libertarian. But I don't think that there's any issue with that. If we have to pay for them, well, they can go fuck themselves. I don't care who they are, how bad their situation is. There you go.
Thanks for always being true to yourself, Scott. Right? Nothing else. This man is always true to himself. Thank you. Okay, let's go to Wick.
Once again, Fabian proves that the fetishization of consistency is a hobgoblin of little minds. Like, look, when it comes down to it, is the American dream still real today? Yes, it is. Gang, we have very short memories when it comes to these things. We look at the struggles, the real struggles. I don't want to diminish them. The real threats we're facing, and again, I don't want to diminish them. And we think that we've never gone through such a thing before, when in fact we have. We've gone through many such periods of extreme political unrest before. Back in the 70s, there were 5 bombings a day. 5 bombings a day, right? Of people dying, being killed. We act like this is new. It's not. Right? And while we have issues still, we have overcome. We have progressed more in these last 200 years in the right direction overall. America is the best country on earth. America is the least racist country on earth. America is the freest country on earth. And I'll stand by that today. Is it a good thing that the American empire is declining? I think that as we have less of an impact on the world stage, it's going to come with threats. Like, look, as a hegemonic power, we've done some terrible things, right? I think withdrawing a little bit is probably a good idea, but we have to recognize that there are other powers on the world stage that are looking to fill the void that America would leave once we withdraw from these areas. So I think it is unwise to view it as all a good thing. We need to make sure, like, look, I would rather be under an American imperialism than China imperialism or Russia imperialism. If I have to pick an imperialism, I want it to be America's imperialism because I have a voice in that. And I think that, again, I stand for America on today, the holiest of all days, right? Where America was birthed forth by the virgin, the virgin birth, like, and we were just now given and endowed our freedom by Jesus and his apostles who came down and guided our founding fathers' hands. And so now we're here, and yay America, go America, hurrah!
Amen. Amen.
Well said.
Okay, all right, true believer there. We love it, right? You'll get extra stars when you go to the
You'll
pearly
get
gates,
50.
okay? All right.
Get 50 stars.
50 stars.
Are those little golden stars in Doobies America?
No. Okay. Moving on, we have our friend Eucharist, please.
don't know how to follow that. I will say, like, base take on the political violence stuff. I think like we tend to calibrate our sentiments to the headlines, and I mean, young people tend to forget like just how much political violence just domestically happened in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s compared to the 2000s and afterwards. So that's fair. So I wanted to talk about the American dream part of the prompt. I think a lot of people today, if you ask them what that meant, they might have some conception that it's an ability to begin life as a working class person and then ascend into the middle class. That's how I've heard it described a lot. I don't know if that's true across the board, but I think at least a lot of people, I don't know if it's the majority or not, a lot of people will give you some story like that. I think that's a different conception than we have had in the past in America and elsewhere. So Corey mentioned John Stuart Mill. Mill has this essay called The Claims of Labor, basically looking at what's claimed by or owed to the working class. And he says we really need to change our rhetoric in the sense that we need to stop talking about like a path out of the working class for these people. And what we need to do is elevate the working class, to elevate their status, their quality of life, and our general like social estimation of what it means to be a working class person. Basically pay them better, treat them better, respect them more. And I think that's a respectable vision. And I think it's one that did at some point exist in some areas. Right. So I think of like, we talk about like the world our grandfathers lived in. Like, yeah, my grandfather was like not super well educated, was in the military for a while, retired from there, and then went to work at a tire factory and retired from there and got a pension and everything else. And, now he's a perfectly respectable deacon at his church and everything else. That world in some ways just doesn't exist anymore. But maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe that vision then and now wasn't always as always cracked up to be, or perhaps it was like at the expense of other people. So whenever I hear the American dream now, this is just because I've like had to watch this and teach it several times. There's this really great debate. It's kind of cliche at this point, but it's between William F. Buckley and James Baldwin. And the prompt is the American dream at the expense of the American black person? They use an outdated word in the prompt. So like Douglas before him, Baldwin gets up and says the American dream like was for thee and not for me. I didn't get it. So he identifies with his ancestors. He's like, I was the one who picked the cotton. I laid the railroads. I did all this and I got nothing out of it. And so he says it comes as a great shock around age 5 or 6 or 7 to discover that the flag to which you've pledged allegiance along with everybody else has not pledged allegiance to you. But the really interesting part of Baldwin's argument that I think is relevant for our conversation about the American dream now is a really inflammatory argument that I think he makes, which is one of the evils and one of the greatest evils that America perpetuated through slavery and through segregation afterwards wasn't just the direct injustice and harm done to black people. It was taking a whole generation and multiple generations of the majority population, white people, and turning them into monsters. So he tells this story about like going into a government office and seeing this like perfectly decent little old white lady sitting there who just looks at him like with hatred. And he dwells on that. He says, it's really a shame. He like mourns the fact that this person who could have been a perfectly good person has been so deeply taught to hate that she's unable to love somebody because of the color of their skin. And so that I think there's a possibility now, as we consider what the American dream looks like now, that we're maybe redeveloping some of that like misplaced resentment towards like immigrants and other people. That's like a serious concern as we're talking about things like, yeah, how do we increase wages? How do we bring production back to America? All these things. I'm concerned and bothered when that tends towards like really inflammatory, like anti-immigrant rhetoric that I think perpetuates the kind of things that Baldwin was concerned with, like this deep psychological harm to most people that they're viewing somebody else as like a scapegoat for their problems. Yeah.
So, Eucharist, I had wanted to have like more Black Americans on this panel specifically for this question and for everything that you've been saying, because I think it's spot on. And there's that question, like what have we gotten out of this nation? And so I might do that on all Black everything, where I exclude white people specifically. So
for the record, you should, if you want to know more like about that from a sociological perspective, definitely check out George Semel's work on like The Stranger. It's usually about Jewish people in Europe at the time, but like if you apply that in modern sociologists' view towards immigrants, it's you'll get an interesting left-wing perspective.
Could you either give me a link or like a book thing that I could pick up, please?
Yeah, I'll put it in the group chat.
Thank you so much. Okay. So, and to my audience, I specifically went out and asked some of our Canadian friends to come on for this question. I wanted their opinion. When I was actually writing this question, I was thinking of erudite, but honestly, when am I not? But yeah, I wanted her opinion on this, right? So, America is looked upon the world, well, it's a nation of immigrants, and is looked upon the world as like a beacon of hope. At least that's what we like to think we are looked upon as, right? So I want to know, like, from our outside perspective, like, what do you think the American dream is? And like, is that thing achievable? And like, if you had a friend who was thinking of immigrating here, right, knowing everything you know, right, and Erudite and Corey know a lot more than the average person, right? With everything you know, would you say that's a good idea? All right, so Erudite, please.
Yeah. It's really interesting because it feels like a lot of time, especially I hear like kind of conflicting statements. For example, like on the right, you'll hear like our country is the greatest, but then also like kind of be like super uncomfortable, like immigrants wanting to come in. And it's like, of course they want to come in. And then on the left, you'll hear like our country's terrible, but then also justify like why like illegal immigrants should be coming in because like their country's so much worse. Of course we should let them in. I think the question of like, is America somewhere that I would recommend to a foreigner? Well, it would really depend on where the foreigner lives, first of all, right? If they were like coming
Erudite,
from
I think
like,
you're muted on your stream. I'm sorry. Your chat's yelling at you.
those little spoiled brats.
Somebody over here is simping watching Not So Erudite. I see how it is.
I got Prime up. I've got Erudite up. I'm just like
Okay,
reading
all
the
right.
chat.
Oh my
He just wants to be in
god.
the cool chat, okay? Wants to use all the bomb ass emotes. So yeah, basically, if it depends on where the foreigner is coming from, right? Like if it's somebody who's like potentially like escaping a war crisis, absolutely, America would be one of the places that I would recommend. It wouldn't be the only place I would like say like yes. Also, to be honest, most Canadians who achieve pretty high levels of education also prefer to move to America because you guys have much higher wages. And if you're in like middle to upper class, all of the woes of America are decently affordable, right? This is why there's a severe brain drain for Canadian educations. You'll get educated in Canada, and then you're going to go to the States to work because you get more money and taxes are less. As a content creator, I can tell you, I get taxed double on pretty much everything that I make, right? And that's why most Canadian content creators also typically move to the States. And so it's a complex question because it really depends on where you're coming from. If you're like low class Canadian or like in another like liberal democracy, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. So it's really complex. Is the American dream dying? I definitely think that there are certain things in the decline. It's something I talked about with Econoboy a fair bit. When like quantitative easing got introduced to basically bail you guys out in 2008, I understand it, but also, holy fuck. I think it feels like it's almost single-handedly just like driving relative wage gap, which relative wage gap really, really fucking matters to people. And so the problem is that Canada's fucking now doing it too. Everyone's doing it now. So I feel like it is declining to some extent because it's like the reality is like assets prices are going up and people's wages are not, and they can't. And like inflation and like wage stagnation are a really big issue. But I would still recommend Canada and the States or like any liberal democracy over like the Congo or like a third world country or even at this point like Brazil or Venezuela and stuff. So it's going to be really complex. But yeah, there's some serious problems with the American dream, I would say.
Thanks so much. Okay, Corey, please.
Yeah, I echo a lot of the sentiments that Not So Erudite eloquently laid out, which is great. And as an outsider, in terms of like the American dream, I kind of like echo some of the sentiments that Scott shared in terms of like, at least, you know, when the American dream is marketed to me, I like picture whatever, the nuclear family and like a white picket fence and whatever, a house, whatever that means. And that is that accessible to most people? I think the American dream boils down to like, you know, the land of opportunity and that everyone has sort of that equal shot to that quote unquote dream. I think it's fair to say that that's not true, and that, you know, the American dream is only accessible to a certain privileged few, and that not everyone has an actual equal shot to it. But to answer, I guess, the more pointed question to the Canadians or Quebecers is like, would I recommend someone, a foreigner, to move to the United States? Again, echoing a lot of the same sentiments that Not So Erudite outlined. It would depend on the certain context. But if it was a choice of, let's say, they're coming from a developing nation, and it's the choice between the United States and Canada, I think Canada Yeah, especially if you're coming from a lower socioeconomic background, you probably have greater access to opportunity here in Canada and healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think Canada's an overall better place that I'd recommend for a foreigner, but that's not a universal recommendation.
Hey, all right, Sprouticus.
All right, I think I personally think the American dream does still exist, but I think it's changed over time. I think it used to be like the neighborhood house, the white picket fence, 2.5 kids, and I think it's just become more general. The longer we've gotten away from that, just through the generational change, that it's just more so just live your happiest life, get to a point to where you don't have to worry about money. You're not living paycheck to paycheck kind of idea. I think that's become more of the American dream. But would I recommend American to foreigners? Yes, I would. If a Canadian asked me if they should move to America, hell yes. Get the hell out of Canada and stop being an American wannabe. So especially people coming from like war-torn areas, I would say, yeah, come over to America, and try live your best life. Make the best that you can out of America. Get the education you can while you're in America, and just try to move forward in the world instead of staying in a war-torn area where you're not going to be able to do much of anything to help push yourself forward in the world. So yes, I would recommend America to foreigners.
Okay, thank you. Dibby, please.
I think the American dream is like absolutely accessible to most people. I think that the issue is that so many people in this country have been taken in by this philosophy or this like this idea.
You sound a
that
little
it
low.
isn't.
You sound a little low.
Hello?
Yeah, there
Is
you
this
go.
better?
Much better. Please
Cool.
go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it's absolutely accessible, but I think that because of people like you, Prem, for example, I think that many people in this country have been taken in by the idea that it isn't, right? That it's inaccessible, that no matter what they do, no matter how hard they try, no matter how hard they work, they're just going to be grinding their face against the floor because the system's against them, the racist police are against them, Trump is keeping them out of the job, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that line of thinking is what leads to people getting stuck in this mediocrity, getting stuck in cycles of like like learned helplessness, and leads to them ending up on the fucking street. So I think we should stop belittling the United States. I think we should absolutely recognize our accomplishments, i.e., almost 70% of this country are like homeowners, right? That's fucking huge, right? So if 70% of the country can own a home, and a massive part of the American dream is home ownership, it seems like it is something that most people can do, right? And then you can go further from that. There are plenty of people around that you can fucking have kids with, build a stable life with, etc. Right? So yeah, I think that I think it absolutely is. I think this is like coping from lefties.
When we ask this question to the world, the answer, do you want to live in America? It's a resounding yes. The wait lines to get into America are through the roof, okay? So, asking people on a panel is one thing, but putting this offer out to the world, like, we can see that people want to come here. People of all stripes, even the Canadians want to come here, right?
Yeah,
That's what Nassau Ariad was saying.
That's
Even
a
the
little bit
Canadians were
of
coming on.
mischaracterization.
Corey,
Uh,
even you said you don't want to be in Canada because you're in Quebec, okay? So I don't want to hear
that's
none of that.
Quebec.
I don't want to
Quebec
hear none of
hates
that,
Anglophone
okay?
people like
So,
me.
look,
Uh,
America
I
doesn't.
will agree with Doobie on this. I will agree with Doobie on this. We are living in a time where of social media where we have discovered that one of the most effective means to get people out and advocating for whatever cause is to catastrophize. Is to say it's worse than it's ever been. No one can afford anything to eat. We have people like dying left and right. Like, this is a very effective tactic, and we have social media amplifying it to the nth degree. Like, the idea that the American dream is dead, it just doesn't hold water, right? Like, look, again, there are huge issues in America that we have to fix, and we are living in a dangerous time, right, where we have threats to democracy that we need to combat. But when I hear this from all circles, like, why even vote now? Like, voting, and it's become a meme, like, just vote harder, ha ha ha. Like, they've mocked the only path forward. Like, they've shut the door and shamed people for choosing the only path forward that has substantively worked historically. It's amazing to me. We are
I just want
Go
to
on.
point out that that's not the only path that has worked historically under systems. I mean, Lenin quite clearly proved that Marxist
The
revolution
only
could
one that
take
doesn't result in massive death and
Wick.
destruction.
But isn't there a
Wick,
problem
but
that
he
like the
resoundingly
American
he resoundingly proved that a political ideology could be engaged through with dual power theory, right? So the idea that you must engage with the states voting between like two shitty candidates, as opposed to localism and ideological spread amongst the populace and like the workers and things like that. Now, whether or not you agree with that, the way
duality
that
binary
happened,
is bullshit,
obviously.
right? Like this duality binary, like if you vote, you can't do local action. No, why? No one is saying that. No one is
You
saying that.
literally just said it is the only path forward, and that people are
Hyperbolic.
mocking the only path.
They
Okay,
are
so you just
the-
admit that you're
one
being
of the only
hyperbolic.
paths
And
forward.
okay, all right.
One of the
Well,
only
I'll
paths
take
forward.
that
Come
down.
on.
Maybe a better
What they
question.
tell you, libertarians are the most nitpicky people in the world? Okay, yeah, we know.
to ask more of a question, if like the American dream, which
You're
like
such
I
a
would agree with
midwit.
Eucharist, is this kind of
Dunning-Kruger.
conception of essentially like the lot that you're born into isn't the lot that you have to stay in. And it's often focalized specifically around class, that like you can move between classes. If you're born poor, if you're born working class, you can move up through life with essentially like hard work and grit. But the issue is that like the dream that was based on was written in a world where the economics was vastly different, and that once we got into like just the crazy shit that started in like 2006 and then 2008, like even what debt is a vastly different thing. So the idea that like even just navigating money, right? This idea of like, this is why I hate when people like talk about like financial literacy for like working class people. It's like finances in 2022 is so much more complex than it ever has been. And like it's hard to teach. We don't have like simple doctrines about like how to consolidate debt, how to move debt around, how to take advantage of debt during inflation. Like most people don't even understand that inflation in part is good because it makes your total vet value worth less, and having money in savings is broadly not great. Like the idea that you can move up through classes is often rooted in like understanding finances to some extent. And I think like the way that like so many people focus on like our democracy's under attack and all this stuff, and I'm like, I think the fundamental thing is that like honestly your guys' financial institutions are falling, like they're fucking people like really, really fucking hard. And it's an issue.
Like
That's
central
sort of-
banking.
What's your question?
let's go
That's
to-
sort
There
of,
was an
we don't
actual
even
question.
have
What is
Oh,
fractional
yeah, was
reserve
there a
banking
question?
anymore.
Was there a question to
Yeah,
to
you
Wake,
said
and
you.
then-
I
and
have
then
an
and
actual
then we gotta go
question,
back
but
to
I
an
didn't hear a
inquiry.
question. Yeah.
I just want to
Erudite?
point out that
Erudite?
you don't
Sorry,
have
it's-
fractional
We're not
so-
talking to you,
reserve
I was
Fabian. Shut
insulted
up.
by noises.
Erudite, do you have a
Sorry, who-
question? Like you
No,
said,
that
I
was a
have a
response to
question.
you. I guess how I'm wondering what your response is of like, yes, the American dream is alive and well. And I'm like, I don't see the evidence for that in all. I don't think it's fully killed. Like I'm not like a radical who thinks we need to buck all the systems and rewrite it. I think like the institutions somewhat work, but there are like serious pernicious corruptions at certain levels that are
Or
killing
threats
the
to it,
American
yes.
dream for a lot of people.
There
I
are
was
threats to it, yes. And look, your concerns are valid, and yes, there are huge issues at play. We saw this with 2008 financial crisis in large part due to how they played with debt that ultimately destroyed and on the backs of the poor and the working class who bore the cost of that. I stipulate to all of that, and even still with all of that today, again, we live in a land where 70% of people can own homes. We live in a land where upward mobility is still pretty high, right, gang? Like we talk about the shrinking middle class, like that's mostly moving up. It's mostly moving up, not all, obviously. And again, these are concerns we need to address. But this idea that just because it isn't a perfect system means the system is being destroyed, I disagree.
I mean,
Okay, so-
what I would just want to add that like we don't even have fractional reserve banking anymore. Fractional reserve banking is already like a debatable issue, but there's no reserve ratio, basically. Like there's no hard, fast reserve ratio. We got rid of that. And so like we're already in a situation where money is being created by the banking institutions by the way that they loan out money, because you don't go to a bank and like pay them a fee to take care of your money. They re-loan out your fucking money. And so wealth money is being injected into the market before we even look at quantitative easing, and the fact that the Fed is going to have to do quantitative tightening here soon, which they were starting to do towards the end of the Trump administration before COVID. Like we're still in like the Fed's 0.75% hike on interest rates is still within the level of attempting to heal the economy, not reduce inflation. So like with the way inflation is now, we're going to need another 1% or 1.5% hike. And then when that comes to roost, and then you have quantitative tightening, like you're looking at a pretty fucking massive recession here soon, not even talking about the problems with entitlement spending.
Let's go to Lactoid, then Corey. Then I'm sure you, Chris, has something to say, but is incapable of raising his hand. So Lactoid.
Prime, I raise my hand a lot, and you just don't see it. Okay, so
this is
Doesn't
somewhat
see religion.
This is somewhat echoing some of what Wick said. I do think that there's a saying that things are always getting better, and people always say that they're getting worse. When you look at the state of America today, a lot of people point to things. Oh, look at this. Obviously, this is America's trash. America's trash. America's trash. These are numbers that you can look up, right? You can look them up right now in terms of median, not even average, right? So this is median income. The U.S. is number 2. Only Luxembourg is ahead slightly, and of course, there's a lot of reasons why Luxembourg is ahead. This factors in things like healthcare and education, right? People say, like, why would you prefer to live in United States over Sweden? Well, I mean, I prefer on a median basis to be making $11,000 more than in one of these other quote-unquote developed countries. I mean, America dominates Canada in this regard. America dominates Britain. America dominates all the Scandinavian countries. All of Europe, except for one tax haven, is the exception, right? When you look at median income, not even average income, which obviously, I know in America there's a lot of rich people, so people say, oh, well, then that obviously will skew it. No, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about median. And you also look at economic mobility, right? Although it's true that in overall terms, economic mobility has shrunk, when you look at the actual graphs of where it's shrunk, it's primarily and almost entirely shrunk amongst the upper class. If you are born to a family of lower class people, according to the World Economic Forum, you are much more likely to make more than your parents, even now, right? Significantly more likely. Over 80%.
60s. Like it's on the decline. This percentage you're talking about is on the decline. In the 1940s, 95% of people born to low income parents were going to out earn by the time they're 30. Now it's 79%. So it's still better. I'm not saying that it's all fucked and broken and we should have a revolution, but the idea that there's not a problem at hand doesn't bear out in the data from what I've seen. I could be wrong. I'm not pretending to be an economic specialist at all, but none of the data to me suggests that like these things are okay and like the status quo is actually working anymore. I think there's something broken in your guys' financial institutions.
You're right in the sense. So you're right in the sense that boomers, I suppose there was a close to 95% chance that they would out earn their parents. Now among the lowest percentiles, now it's about 80%. So there has been a little bit of a drop there. You still have the vast majority of people out earning their parents in the lower income levels. You still have America out earning everywhere else in the world besides Luxembourg on a median level basis, dramatically out earning Canada. And I'm curious, like when people are saying like the U.S. is kind of the problem child when it comes to economics, when it comes to economic mobility, and when it comes to wage parity, I'm curious, like why is it the case then? Look, I'm fine with criticizing America, sure, but why is it the case that America consistently does better than everyone else?
So I guess Erudite probably wants to respond.
Oh yeah, Erudite, you can respond, and then we're going to.
I guess I just wanted to outline a couple more percentiles so we know what we're working with. Yes, when people come from the bottom percentile of parents, they tend to still be upwardly mobile. But let's look at the middle class. In 1940, 93% of people who were born to middle class parents were out earning their parents by the time they're 30. Now it's 45%. For the top, like upper class, 41% in the 1940s were out earning their parents by the time they were 30. Now it's 8%. It is on the steep decline, and you're right.
For rich people.
It is more impacting the top, but that is in large part, I would argue, because of QE.
Look, I agree with you. It is getting harder for rich people to like out earn their parents. It's true. Like America is shifting towards a more lower income.
Can I ask why that's a bad thing?
Well, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is like the reality.
Like we know that this wage gap that you mentioned, Erudite, is a huge issue. Like the gap in wealth, right? So if we're making it harder for the upper class, the highest of the high, if that's slowing down, why is that a bad? I think that would be in fact a good sign.
It says
right?
that the idea that there is class mobility isn't really happening as much anymore. That's the concern.
I want to point out real quick.
Sorry, I got to move on.
A fact, right?
The
Gini coefficient.
I got to move on to Corey. I got to move on to Corey.
Just one sentence.
Is it going to be one sentence?
The Gini. It's literally one sentence. The Gini coefficient isn't a problem; it's a metric. Like if you say it's a problem, you have to justify the problem.
Okay. Erudite, I want to argue with you on this point because I think there's some interesting things to say about this. But I got to go to Corey because he's been waiting quite patiently. Please.
I'm gonna try to respond to as many things that I wanted to. I guess I'll start with Lactoid's points. I think it's so interesting, telling that pretty much the only examples that you give of American exceptionalism is like median income, and social mobility.
It's the economy.
Yeah, and that I understand that's totally how the only lane in which your brain works. And you don't bring up the fact of sure, I'll earn $10,000 more, but I might have a lower life expectancy. My maternal mortality, infant mortality might not be as good. If I'm a cystic fibrosis patient, I probably want to live in Canada, where on average we live 10 years longer as a cystic fibrosis patient in Canada in comparison to the United States. Deaths of despair are also pretty much at an all-time high in the United States. So take that into account. Your prison population, your incarceration rate, but yes, focus only on the median income.
Sure. So, okay, I like I said before, there's no problem in like criticizing America in certain regards. The difference is there seems to be, at least among a lot of the people I talk to, this conception that America is the problem child and that we can't do anything right. In reality, I just disagree with this mentality. I think in reality, America does better when it comes to economic advancement, when it comes to economic mobility, when it comes to people being able to do what they want to do. Sure, is it the case that people die early here because they make the decision to eat McDonald's more often? Yeah, I mean, obesity here is much higher than it is in other countries. Is that like a bad choice? Sure, but I guess it's sort of subjective to say, it's a bad thing that people can make this decision or not. I think it's a good thing that people can make a decision, even if it turns out to be bad for their health. I think it's a bad thing when you have an authoritarian government that's setting restrictions on whether or not you can live the life you want to live, even if that life is unhealthy.
Corey, if you wanted to respond, then we'll go
I mean, to tie the lower life expectancy solely to just obesity, that's
contributor. That's the primary contributor.
That is debatable, and we can get into the numbers about that.
The number one cause of death in America is heart disease.
Heart disease, yeah. And obviously, obesity is tied to that. But the obesity rates, sure, America is number one in regards to that, but other countries have this problem too.
That's another thing we're really good at, motherfucker.
I damn right.
Get fucked.
Exactly, which
happy 4th of July, let's go.
Which bleeds into American corporate capitalism and the aggressive marketing of these types of addictive foods, et cetera, and how certain things are subsidized, and so all of those things are tied together.
Or can I say? Great. Go ahead. You can respond, and then we'll go to Chris, we'll Doobie, and Wick.
Right. So when you compare it to Canada, so the U.S., the median income, in terms of adjusting for purchasing power, this is disposable income, right? This is not including things like education and healthcare. This is all factored in. When you look at America, it's $42,800. Canada is $36,656. Now, sure, maybe I can even bite the bullet and say if you're born with cystic fibrosis, maybe you'd be better off in Canada. For everyone else, you're better off born in America.
Okay. Let's go to you, Chris, then Doobie and Wick.
Yeah, Corey said certain things are subsidized. Let me blackpill you guys on corn, okay? Corn is the problem with heart disease. Corn is the problem with obesity.
True.
Corn is making us all alcoholics. We over-subsidize corn, and it's in everything. It's real. It's a problem, okay?
Corn is
it's
real?
Awful. Yeah, no, the alcohol stuff actually is the biggest black pill for me, and that's also another contributor to heart disease, is that we're all alcoholics in America. But something that I think is worth considering is that when we're looking at things like the outcomes that Corey was talking about, right? Things that we should probably be concerned about, right? Dying earlier, not a great thing. A lot of those effects are really concentrated in particular areas, and they're going to be poorer areas, but they're also really concentrated in the South, right? There's still lasting economic impact from the way things have been, right? There's still lasting health outcome impacts from the way things have been, and we've not dealt with them well. And so it's a little bit complicated to like come up with a policy to fix this when the outcomes are so different depending on whether or not you're like a relatively, you know, well-off person or middle-class person living in a nice little urban center, or whether you're just like a generational impoverished person who's a descendant of slaves or sharecroppers in the South, right? It's going to be very, very different for you, and the, you know, the sorts of healthcare you have access to are going to be very different. The sorts of jobs you have access to are going to be very different. So that's all going to matter if we're trying to think about how could we potentially address this and enable more people to achieve the American dream, whatever that is.
Yubi.
Yeah, I think we just need to be careful when we're comparing like modern day United States to, you know, the baby boomers and how they might have benefited from the massive like industrialization of the economy after World War II, right? Like that this was like a huge like turn for the United States. So yeah, it makes sense that, you know, they did much better than their parents, and over time, yeah, maybe it's been reducing to like normal levels. And I think that also there's like this. I think we also need to be careful about like comparing the United States, which is a country of like what 300 some million people, to Canada, which has a population lower than California and like a third of the GDP. Right? It's very these are really strange things to compare. First off, but if you were to just compare them to California, like I think there's like this misconception that the United States doesn't have health care for poor people. Most of the U.S. does. Right? Most states in the United States do have free or low-cost health insurance available from the government for poor people. Right? Still the case that most Americans get their health care through their employers, which I think it's fine if that's how you want to do it. But it's this idea that, you know, we're just letting poor people down the streets. Right? If you have cystic fibrosis or whatever the fuck is kind of silly.
Okay. Wick.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're getting
I
a little
think
stack in the background. What is that noise? Okay, now it stopped. All right, wonderful. Go ahead, Wick.
Oh. So yes, like look, obviously, when comparing countries, there's a lot like culture, history, things like that we have to look to, depending on where you take your snapshot in time, and how you draw the graph, whether it's the last 5 years versus the last 50 years versus the last 100 years, you know, you get very different views of things. I still think like, look, I'm like unironically hopeful for us. Like there's a lot to fear and things like that, but we have the ability to overcome. We have the ability to come together in a way that we've done before, and we will again. I think we need to ignore and shun the voices on both sides, right, who are saying that it can't get better, the other side's out to kill you, and if you don't fight them, they will kill you. I think we need to stop believing in that narrative because I just don't think it's true for the most part. Obviously, there are threats out there and we have to be aware of them, but most people don't want their neighbors dead. Most people just don't. Most people don't hate their neighbor. Most people just don't, right? Like
Depends how loud they are.
fair enough. But when it comes to wanting to kill other people, very, very few outside of some psychopaths and zealots want to actually hurt other people. So when it comes to bringing us together as America, healing the divide that is threatening us right now, I think that we need to push back against fear-mongering, push back against catastrophizing, push back against all these voices out there that are telling us we can't. Like Obama, right? Yes, we can. Well, I still believe in that. I think we've had some setbacks, and I know this is a pretty lib shit take right now, but it's true, right? Like we
Yeah, but
can do these
Obama was
things.
one of those people pushing the idea that the United States was racist and that if you're a minority, you know, the system was going to hold you down. Right? So like we can't give him too much credit.
Look, there is systemic issues in America. To deny that would be foolish, but it's getting better. We can also say that in the last 50 years, being a minority in America has gotten better. Like we don't want to go back in time, right? Like no one seriously wants to go back to the 80s or the 60s and things when it comes to race relations. Like it's not good, but it's better than it has been. So
I think this is something that like probably would make me maybe deviate from most centrists, which is that like I think, for example, like the more progressive concern about the status quo is based in some level of merit, particularly when it comes, like I said, to finances. Like I actually think that there's some merit there. And while in general, I agree, I don't think fear mongering is the correct. I don't think like screaming for the like glorious revolution and like the burning and crashing of the world. I get concerned when we push status quo rhetoric too much of being like, but stability, like things are fine. And it's like, the issue is that we know that relative wealth is like the gap is widening. It is increasingly widening, and it is causing assets to become inaccessible to more and more, especially your lowest earners. And I think that this is a genuine problem. And it feels like a lot of times when we like push for status quo, we dismiss the fact that it's a genuine problem by just being like, oh, so what? You just want to like tear it all down? You're just gonna like say, and it's like some people are saying that. I am not saying that, but I'm also saying that like we need to admit that there are problems when there are problems. And I think in the financial institution, there are some significant problems. I'm not even saying what the solutions are, right? But to act like there aren't, and it's like, but it's just fine. It's like some things aren't fine.
So there can
again,
be.
I gotta go after this because income inequality, right, which is measured by the Gini coefficient, is not like it's just a metric, right? And what you're saying is that because income inequality is growing, that this prices the poor out of the ability to purchase assets, right? Which is home ownership, usually is what we're talking about here, or like other large assets that are necessary, like cars, things like that.
Vehicles. It also prices them out of luxury goods, of like services that they will just only cater to the top like 10% because there's more money than making it for everyone. Like yachts or something like that.
The problem with that is that isn't necessarily true. Right. So, you know, what we can do is we can look at certain goods. Right. So one of the things that we've done that like there's been some research on, I can send you this piece later if I can find it. It's on like beds. Right. And so when we look at beds in the 1970s, what we found is that the difference between a luxury, really nice bed and like the bottom line bed was very little. And over time, what occurs as you know, because you have a supply and demand equation, right? Price is met by what people are willing to pay based off of the, you know, the theoretical meeting of those two things. And so what has occurred is that luxury beds have gotten really nice and have gotten magnitudes of order more expensive. And then for cheap beds, right, they have gotten drastically cheaper. And not only have they gotten drastically cheaper, they've become much more quality. Right. So like beds in the 70s would have cost you today like the equivalent of like $1,500 for a cheap bed. And now you can go to Walmart and you can get like a knockoff Purple or Casper mattress, right, which is much, much nicer for like a couple $100. And so like, while I do agree with you that it is one factor we should pay attention to, I want to make sure that like you're not kind of like Robert Reiching this position, right? And like just looking at like income inequality as an inherently a problem and looking at it holistically in the economy and like how that occurred and what wealth was stolen and how is inflation going and how is it that the wealthy are using debt so that inflation is advantageous to them in a way that the poor can't, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. So the reason why I bring up specifically quantitative easing is because of this, right? As quantitative easing, as I'm sure, sorry, do you want me to stop, Prime? Oh, okay. Quantitative easing it's literally trying to inject liquidity. It is basically just causing inflation. That is the purpose of QE. It's just
it's not per se causing monetary inflation as much as it is asset inflation, and monetary inflation tends to be downstream of asset inflation.
So that's kind of my point.
Specific type of dangerous inflation. I get where you're going.
Yes, is that it's driving up price of assets. The issue is that when we look at the difference between low class and higher class people, most high class people always have their money in assets, and they always have, because in a large part assets is how you make money. The issue is that for a lot of impoverished people, A, they don't understand that this is how the new economy works, and B, they don't really have enough money to be purchasing these large assets. So as we're driving up the price of assets and we're driving down the value of dollars, not only are assets getting more expensive, and I get that there's cheap knockoffs that are available, we're also making the savings account of the poor worth less, while the essentially the savings of the rich, which are their various assets and stocks, are worth more. So it's like it's speeding up the separation. And the issue is
the rich
to why
don't have liquid assets most of the time.
Exactly.
Loans and they lock in an interest rate on the
Yeah.
loan and then inflation occurs, and then the loan becomes cheaper for them. They're able to
Yes.
profit
When
more
they sell an
as the
asset
loan
off, they
stays
pay
on.
it and they
Yeah,
consolidate their debt.
it's a shell game. So yeah, I do
I
agree
get
with you. The
that.
quantitative easing and like
So, like,
excessive bonds are an issue.
the reason why like the relative wealth gap is really concerning to me is it seems like at a psychological level, people care a lot more about relativity than they actually care about like objective things. Right?
Keeping up with the Joneses, yeah.
So like if Lactard kind of talked about, I think you'd probably agree with this idea, like the reality is like we all have more money than we did 40 years ago. Like we just literally do, right? There is more money. But the problem is that as relativity grows, people become increasingly unsettled. It's this weird shit. We see it even with trauma. If you have a relative worldview of what other people are existing around you and you're well below that, it doesn't matter what it is, you're disgruntled. It's this, and like relativity is like this really weird psychological phenomenon, but people care more about this. So I'm not saying relative wealth is inherently evil. I'm saying the greater relative wealth gaps are, the more unhappy people are going to get. And that
From
is
a
a problem for
psychological
our nation.
perspective, I think that's a good argument. There's a lot of research, especially within crime data. When you have
Yeah.
relative income differences, like in the same neighborhood, it like can increase crime drastically.
Yeah. And trauma too. It's crazy with trauma studies as well. Like
Yeah,
what traumatizes people in one culture versus another.
I want to add just one little fact on that, which is that during the COVID lockdowns, or you can say the necessary precautions during the pandemic, whatever you want to say, largest transfer of wealth from the poor and the middle class to the wealthy in American history that has ever existed as long as America has ever existed. Far worse than the Great Depression.
Let's go to Wick. I think you didn't get a chance to go. Then Lactoid. Or
No,
did you?
I literally just went before.
Oh, I just
Erudite.
went. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm making sure.
I'll
Thank
talk
you.
more if you want, but I won't.
Lactoid, please.
I think that's a really interesting, yeah, because I think one of the issues is that people, I think things are generally getting better and people have more money just in terms of relative terms, like or relative to what they could have bought before, right?
Yes.
But when you look at economic mobility, sure, like maybe when you have everybody who's like dirt poor coming out of the Great Depression, of course you're going to out earn your parents, right? When you're coming out of that. And nowadays, when you have all this wealth built up, you don't have like the high income earners out earning their parents, and then maybe some people are disgruntled by that, right? The concern I have is it seems like kind of along with what Wick was saying, this catastrophizing of like American economy and society is that this is a very powerful tool to argue like for handouts. It's to argue to get what you want. One clear example of this is student debt.
No, it's not. God damn it! Handouts cause more inflation.
No. But no, what I'm saying, like the catastrophe, like this idea of like
King, I'm just like no.
I know the catastrophe. What I'm saying is like the catastrophe, like making the American economy seem as like a catastrophe for like the common people, is oftentimes used as a tool to look for handouts in a way where it doesn't actually make sense. Someone could say, well, look, as like a wealthier person, my economic mobility isn't as high as my parents was, even though like you're making more than most Americans. But like you're still going to use that relative basis to argue for things like student debt relief, when in reality, most student debt is owned by high income people, right? So why is it the case that like high income people are demanding handouts from the government, because debt relief is a handout, like for tax purposes? If someone gives you a loan and then forgives it, that is a literal like just cash transfer. They're just giving you money, giving you free money. Why is it the case that you have all these high income people, because student debt is disproportionately owned by high income people, who are demanding all this free money from the government? Well, they're saying like, well, I don't want to owe this debt because like, you know, in the past, like the baby boomers were more economically mobile than me, even though they're making more money than like lower class people. That's the concern I have with a lot of this like catastrophization and like focus on like the American being shit, because you have people who use it to argue to fuck over everyone else to get free money.
I agree. I think one of the concerns though is that a lot of status quo, like politicians and advocates, will kind of dismiss these concerns, especially like the relative wage gap concerns. And so like part of what I think is like lending to such like extremism is like not wholly, obviously it's very multifaceted, right? But we're having these growing bodies of extremist positions on both sides of the political aisle. And it seems to be very in tandem as well with like major wealth gaps. And it seems to be the case, like the reality is that like at this point in America, it is literally more impacting to like cost somebody their entire business than it is to like break their arm. Well, I guess in America, maybe we'll say, but like bodily harm to a lot of people sacrifice their body and risk their body all the time because cash is actually more important for survivability at this point than just like your body alone. That's why we sacrifice it a lot. And so I think I just get frustrated with the status quo. I'm not into the fear mongering, right? I'm not into like the populist revolutionary, but this is why they catch on and others and the status quo politicians don't, is like status quo politicians like won't really acknowledge this in a real way or actually put forward like any form of policy to like solve, for example, like the real realities of the increasing relative wealth gap.
So when you
real quick, one last thing, I agree with you. I just think that people need to be more honest about when they describe things as like everything's going downhill. They shouldn't say that. They should say, look, like I think we're entitled to everything getting like much better than it is getting better, but everything is getting somewhat better. I think they should say that.
I just want to be clear, Erudite, when you say status quo politician, what you mean that a politician or someone who advocates against a change. Is that what you're referring to, or is it something else? And if something else, please describe it.
So you know how progressives will often say that there isn't really a candidate for them. I'm not sure if Prime would necessarily agree with that, but like most Democratic people that you can vote for, a lot of like far left people would say like, this isn't a candidate for me. And there was kind of the same disgruntling on the far right. And I think in large part, it's because like most candidates tend to fall somewhat within like the center. And so like, this is a critique I'm leveling against my own group because I recognize myself as a centrist, just being like, I think sometimes we're just too dismissive and we always refer back to the status quo because we're like, well, it's worked. But because of that, we become a little bit blind to like, I'm not saying it's all doom and gloom, we're all going to be broke, but I'm saying if the trajectory of the wealth gap continues at the rate and the way that it is, we are going to be fucked at some point. It's probably not tomorrow, but what are we going to be at in 40 years? Like, what is that going to look like? What strain is that going to cause on society? And more importantly, what psychological division is that going to be caused? Because as we said, relative wealth gap fucking matters to people way more than the actual amount of money they have.
So in 28 years.
Yeah,
not
in
even
that
40,
case,
28 years will
what
be
I would say,
121 trillion plus.
What I would say to that is I think that again, like to me, when I hear status quo, it doesn't mean no changes. It doesn't mean that nothing ever changes. We don't put any policies in place to kind of correct trajectories that we see extending out over the long term. In fact, to maintain the status quo, we have to address these things because otherwise the status is going to change and we're going to run into these real issues, right? So I'm just trying to get language, cross this language gap, I think we're having here, because when you say status quo, what I hear is probably something different than what you've been meaning. That's all I wanted to do.
You, Chris, do you have anything else to say?
I do. So I think the point on like the psychology of kind of an extreme inequality is really important. And this is something that is like the constant concern of a lot of thinkers, like just through the modern era. As we move into commercial society, there's real thought given to what inequality is going to do to us, because when we have, like Scott was talking about, like these enlightenment or egalitarian assumptions in terms of like rights and liberties and all these things, there's some questions that start getting introduced about, okay, but what about the inequality in real life? What is that doing to us? So again, I'm going to simp for my boy Adam Smith. He has this really interesting section that I think explains weird nerds on Twitter who defend Elon Musk. He's trying to explain why it is that people of middling or poor status tend to, or sometimes do, look up to the rich and admire them. And one of the explanations that he gives is that when you're of middling status, like say you're just kind of like a normal person in a normal work environment, you kind of get a feeling sometimes that exercising social virtues can be a positive thing, right? If you're known in your workplace as being like an awful backbiting person and everybody hates you, you might not climb very far. But maybe, if you're like a working class person, your experience has been, the honest guy down the road who everybody knows they can trust with their car, like he does well in society, right? And then they analogize from that to rich people, and they assume that that's also the case. But Smith says it's not the case, right? When you get into the upper ranks of society, there's all sorts of incentives to manipulate and to bribe and to do all these other things. So we make a mistake in our judgment of what it's like to be rich. There's all sorts of mistakes in our judgment of what it's like to be rich, namely that we think they're, more like happier than us or more secure. And then he also has so there's like his moral psychology, and then he has like an economic argument where he says, inequality is kind of inevitable. And it can be a good thing, actually, if there he says specifically if there is actually a kind of trickle down effect, and he thinks there will be a kind of trickle down effect as long as there's not too great of an inequality, as long as the rich are spending their money on luxury goods, and that money somehow makes it into the hands of middling and working class people. But when that gap gets so extreme, the wealthy have so much wealth that it just gets pocketed in sort of like incestuous ways of growing and doesn't actually trickle down in that way, and it's very bad. So he has this like really, I think, awesome and complex argument about like how like raw inequality or extreme inequality could like undermine our own happiness. It makes us so different from the rich that we can't really have the sympathetic ties that he wants us to, and it can cause us to believe that the rich are just so much better than us that we waste our lives trying to be like them, and we never actually can get there unless we're incredibly lucky, and we miss out on the things that could actually make us happy. So Smith is great on this.
Real quick, he did also argue that deflation was a good thing.
You can respond.
Well,
yeah,
just throwing that out there.
You can respond Lighthearted if you like.
I apologize that this is, I think a lot of people, including myself, simp for Elon Musk sometimes because Elon Musk, not necessarily because of his wealth, right? But because of like, I think a lot of people, especially on the left, seem to separate like doing good and accomplishing a lot from wealth. But I think people like Elon and several other people, right, kind of, sure, they profit off of what they do, but the primary reason people are super interested is because, you know, you have here somebody who works, you know, 6 to 7 days per week building rockets to go to Mars, or like building electric cars.
William Shatner, but they're doing good.
So everything
He's never built a fucking rocket. He's never built a fucking rocket.
No, so everything. Hold on, that's not necessarily true, right? He is like one of the primary engineers at SpaceX and Tesla. He does a lot of the actual hands-on work there, much more than any other CEO. I understand like it's fine to like hate the CEO of Philip Morris or whatever, right? Or Altria, I guess now. But when we're talking about somebody who's doing like pretty good work in terms of pushing forward an agenda of electric cars, colonizing Mars, and he puts in like constant work to do it, and he's talented at being able to do that. There's nothing wrong with like admiring that. Like this sort of is like an American champion, like Ford, like no. How
is advancing industry for your own purposes necessarily good, right? Like you can say that he is good at creating a business, good at running that business. Well, I don't know, the stock prices might say
that's
otherwise.
The only lane,
but
the
like,
economic output.
That's the only economic output, and then you associate that with...
It increases GDP, and this increases the median income of Americans. That's a good. That's the only lane.
Sure. So initially, toilets, when they were first invented, were almost exclusively reserved for the rich because of the uniqueness of that innovation, right? And the cost that it took to create them. By making that ubiquitous in society, it became more accessible to the common people. The exact same thing is true of electric cars, right? Like I'm seeing more Teslas now on the road than ever before, and other car companies are starting to realize like, fuck, there's like a market demand here for electric cars. We have to meet this market demand. And so now they're coming out with electric cars. And that was Elon Musk's entire goal. He said it, he even said so as much, right? Like our goal here is to make electric cars ubiquitous amongst American society. Sure, the first electric car, maybe that was too expensive for the common person. Now they're just like getting cheaper.
No, okay. So the electric
common
car
thing
was could have been a thing before, right? Like there's a whole history of the electric car and how like we could have had it. I believe it was in the 90s or something. That we could have pushed this forward. But for all kinds of nonsense, it didn't happen. But like rather than look to a person who is for their own singular purpose, finds it profitable, right? So they've, oh my god, so like the climax of the fireworks is happening right now. So if you're hearing about popping, that's what's happening. But they happen to have economic goals that align with like sort of environmentalism, right? Electric cars are still non-environmentally friendly. But like they have a goal that like just happens to align with what a lot of people want, right? And you call that moral good, right? Instead, we could be focusing on the government, right? And the government pushing electric cars. If the United States government got its fucking act together, right, and decided, well, we're going to invest massively in electric cars. We're going to buy electric cars. We're going to install the infrastructure around the country to have electric cars, right? We could do all of that, massively lower the price. We could do that much more effectively and better than like looking to Elon Musk. If Elon Musk could better make a buck, right, polluting, right, directly polluting in each way, polluting, he'd be fucking doing that.
Prime.
That's the dumbest argument I've ever
So
heard.
yeah, Prime.
Like there's so many things wrong with that. Like, first of all,
I want to respond
Elon
to that
Musk
after he gets
himself-
done.
First of all, Elon Musk himself has said that he didn't want the government involved in the subsidization of this to begin with because he knew that he could do it better without government interference.
He can't do it
so
better.
The man, he can. Trust
can't
me.
do it better. No, I'm not.
Well,
I don't
since
trust
you know
you.
so much,
He can't do it
since you
better.
know so much about fucking making such a great electric car company, why don't you get off fucking Twitch and go be the fucking world's richest person?
Yes, that's right. No, because I didn't. Yeah, because I didn't come from a gem. Was it a gem?
His
heiress,
dad
right?
owned a gem mine or some sort
A
of
gem mine, exactly.
Everyone
right.
brings
Yeah,
it
like,
up.
I'm
Dog, you
sorry,
could spend,
I don't have
dude,
that.
if you cared so much about only getting
wow.
the wealth to do that, you just as easily could go out and work 100 hours a
Prime.
week,
Yes.
working regular fucking jobs
Exactly.
for 10 years
That's
until
exactly
you saved
what I
up
could
money,
do.
and then you could buy
Yes.
storage facilities
That's
in
exactly what I
suburbs,
could do.
and then
That
have
actually
them
makes
manage
complete
themselves,
fucking sense.
invest yourself in
makes
those
complete
things,
sense.
and in 15
Which
years,
is why,
you'd be fucking super
people
wealthy.
start up massive industries all the time, right? It's exactly. People start
The fact
up
that the
Fortune 500
hubris that
companies
you
all
have,
the time,
the
exactly, because they just
stupid
I'll just
hubris
work
that you
100
have.
hours, right? Let's
The
talk.
fact that
let's
you know
talk to
more
my
about producing
father,
electric
who,
cars than Elon Musk,
especially
is
when I was
fucking
younger, would
so
work
goddamn
that
stupid.
much, right? Would work
PrimeCayes, take this fucking L.
would work hours and hours and hours, right? He worked 3 goddamn jobs, right?
Can't even get to the
he had
point I
enough
want to
money-
make
he had
because your
enough money
argument's
to start
so fucking
a
stupid.
Fortune
You can't get to the
500
point you want to
company.
make because
It's
you can't stop fucking
amazing.
talking and you
Yeah,
talk in
it's
circles.
Unbelievable.
Fabian.
That's
Can I
unbelievable.
respond?
Such an ideologue.
Of
You
course,
talk in
government,
circles.
of course, the government could actually, the biggest buyer could lower the cost of electric cars. Absolutely, it could. It could say,
The
like,
government
this-
can't lower costs.
Of
That's not how
course it can.
economics work.
Yes, it can.
Can I-
No, it's
Absolutely
literally
can.
not
Here,
possible.
can
You're
I-
a fucking idiot.
It absolutely
Here,
can.
It's
let
not
me-
possible.
You
let-
think
let me-
government
we're not saying
incentives
anything.
have
We're
no
not saying
effect?
anything at this point. I'm just-
I want to be able to respond, right? So I want to respond to a couple things. The first thing I want to respond to is electric cars are absolutely environmentally friendly compared to any kind of gas combustion vehicle. It's just true, right? When you look at the average amount of, I know that they're mining lithium in Bolivia or whatever, right? But even when you factor in all the costs of mining, the overall carbon footprint of an electric car is dramatically less than any
I
kind
agree.
of gas.
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's a good goal that Elon Musk is putting forward. I also
I could
think
argue
that
against that.
we'll argue that in a second then. But one of the I think this kind of like stems to like a greater problem of like I don't know, when you have someone like Elon Musk, who the vast majority of his wealth is tied into his ownership of these companies that he has founded and grown to a certain extent.
He didn't find Tesla.
So, well, he founded Tesla. He bought the name from somebody else, but he founded that car company. So he founded that individual car company. I understand he bought the name from somebody else. He bought the name. He paid them a ridiculous amount of money for it, but the actual car company was his creation, right? Elon Musk founded that, and he also founded SpaceX. He also founded Solar City. These are the ideas that he had as an engineer. He is an engineer. He's a primary engineer in these companies. PayPal too, right? These are things that he came up with. Like for example, when you look at, this is a story right from fee.org, right? When you look at the cost, this government can just do it, right? Well, when you look at the cost for a space flight, right? So between 1970 and 2000, the cost to launch a kilogram of space remained fairly steady with an average cost of $18,500. The only time that the actual cost of launching spacecraft into space began to decline is when SpaceX got involved. And now the cost under a SpaceX Dragon or Falcon 9 rocket, the cost to launch is only $2,720 per kilogram, which is dramatically less than any time beforehand in history.
This is beautiful. No, this is great, right? Like he uses space exploration. Wonderful. Thank you for that one. Because space exploration, you mean the industry, right? Well, it was an industry previously, but the era in which the government put billions upon billions upon billions of dollars into develop, right, over the course of decades. That industry, that area Is what
Yeah,
you're
and they
talking
couldn't,
about.
and they couldn't get the cost down.
They created the science. They got the rockets to actually
They
fucking
created
work.
the science.
No, but no, actually, no, I mean it. No, absolutely fucking mean it. They created the fucking science. It wasn't there. The rocket science wasn't there.
They incentivized science.
They create. Yeah. Like
I don't disagree. They are first.
Okay, great.
They are not best. They are not best.
No,
They are first. They are not best.
Don't move the goal line. Don't move the goal line. Right?
We did gobble up some Unit 731 and Nazis.
You can obviously say that like another organization can do something better than one organization, right? They might have some processes that can make them better in one way, right? Like according to certain metrics.
Versus
absolutely the case. Hold on. 1 second, guys. You can do that, sure. But like that's where we I mean the American government created smaller computers. Computers were once the size of a fucking room, right? And we shrunk those computers down specifically for spaceflight. All of that was government investment. All of that was done. Spaceflight would never have been profitable for any private company if it wasn't for the investment the American government did beforehand, and the Russian government, I suppose.
That's a blatant lie. And
that's exactly what it is.
You're not educated enough to speak on this, Scott.
No money.
So shut the fuck up.
In doing that. That investment was done before.
Far more educated on economics than fucking Prime.
You don't know what you're talking about.
And then taking that technology and improving on it, right? I can say that SpaceX has made improvements. Absolutely, I wouldn't deny that, right? They can make improvements on that and then make it so that they can make a profit. But that's done off the backs of it's not trillions of dollars.
So let's take one claim you make.
Let me make.
No, because
I just want to pick apart one claim.
Shut up! Please, Lactoid. Yes.
Okay, so I obviously, I think what Scott was going to say, I would probably agree with. I do take a lot of the qualms about some of the representations you made. However, even giving you everything you said is true. Let's just, for charitability's sake, let's say it's true that all this stuff was like generated by the U.S. government or whatever initially. The fact still remains that for 3 decades, the cost of spaceflight remained prohibitive, and then SpaceX came in and made it cost effective, and it was Elon Musk who did that. And as a person, as a person who was able to do that, shouldn't we acknowledge, sure, here was somebody who was able to take all this work that was stagnant and was able to make something incredible out of it. We're not saying he didn't benefit from everybody before him or whatever, but what he was able to do was an incredible feat that that the government simply wasn't able to do for 3 decades.
We are arguing. Hold on. I got to deal with this. I
just want to ask.
1 second.
Yeah, go for it.
Can I just pick apart one of your bullshit claims?
No, I'm talking to Lactoid. I'm sorry, Scott. Right? We can argue about.
You just made a lot of bullshit claims.
That's fantastic. Wonderful. Right?
So.
Lactoid, right? We're arguing 2 different things here, right? Lactoid, the reasonable one, I can get through. 2 different things. So what I'm talking about, right, is that for SpaceX to be profitable in the first place, there had to be all that technology created beforehand. Right, that investment was necessary. It laid the groundwork, just like for everything else. The investment in creating any sort of business, right? They would be much move away from spaceflight for just a second, right? Just like selling fucking shoes, right? It would be much harder if the government hadn't already invested in the roads where you get your goods, invested in the electric lines that go to your factory to power everything, right? Like all those things, like the water pipes, all that infrastructure, that's your business built on top of that. If you had to create that business by yourself, right, from scratch and make all that infrastructure, it'd be a lot more expensive and then be prohibitively expensive. You couldn't even do it, right? Just agree with me on that point, right?
No.
Okay, hold on. Ignoring you.
You're lying. You just don't know.
That's nice. Lactoid, can you agree with me on that narrow point before I move on?
I don't know, but I'm willing to grant it to you for the purpose of the conversation.
I do know.
Lactoid, shut up. Lactoid.
Well, Scott's saying he has data to the contrary.
I don't care. Lactoid.
I know you don't care because you're spouting bullshit.
Shut up. Oh my God. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. I will deal with you later. I can deal with you later. But I can't deal with both of you at the same time, right? Okay? All right?
Maybe you should moderate instead of...
Shut up. I am moderating. I just fucking muted you. All right? There you go. It works. It works. Thank you. I should use that beforehand, and it works. Oh, it's so much
Power of
quieter,
America.
so much more peaceful. It works. It just works perfectly. All right. Lactoid. Right. No, it's obvious. Come on, like you know this. Like
He's labeling himself. He's calling himself a coward.
Okay,
You
no,
know.
makes sense, right?
You
Yeah,
know,
I agree.
you know.
I agree, coward.
They just named the coward. That's what he
They
is.
kind of roasted
literally
you,
had
bud.
to
I don't know.
lay down asphalt, right? Before you started your business. Lay down the asphalt, right? Then create the power lines from the power plant, right? That you obviously invested into, right? To your to the side of your business. You had to dig into the ground and then make the waterworks, right? Can you say that would add cost to a business to selling shoes? You can't say that it would add costs.
I have no doubt that yes, any work that was done beforehand obviously like decreases the level that you have to invest in.
Yes.
That being said,
Yes,
hold on. I don't know if it would have been more efficient to have other private companies do that beforehand as opposed to the government, right?
Okay,
I agree with you. There needs to be more work built up in advance. But like even that being said, right? Like sure, Bill Gates like maybe use some like technology developed by the U.S. military. Sure, like Raytheon does, Boeing does, and SpaceX does, right? Perhaps this is the case. Now, I'm not conceding the fact that perhaps this could have done more efficiently in the past by a private government. Regardless, we don't. That's a counterfactual because it wasn't done, right? It was done by the U.S. government. That being said, like when we're talking about admiring people who are able to take a stagnating industry and turn it into something else, Elon Musk, when I'm talking about admiring him as an engineer, he was able to take. Did the government put money into it? Sure, but yet it was stagnating for 3 decades with the price of launching as the same, and then he came in and then dropped it down by a matter of tenfold.
Okay, hold on. So let me say the last thing, then I'm going straight to you, Corey. Right? I'll go straight to you. I'll just
tenfold.
So that's why I'm saying we're talking about two different things. So I'm talking about everything that I just said previously, right? And then you are saying that Elon Musk, right, through a matter of innovation through his company, through SpaceX, right, managed to reduce a price, right? So managed to make an existing product better, right? And you're admiring him for that. Like so
dramatically better.
Sure, right? So I'm admiring so I'm talking about like we can't forget the investment from the government. My point was that government can make things cheaper. I'm saying for this industry with the because Elon Musk isn't making this all from scratch, right? He isn't starting from like a propeller plane, right? And saying, okay, well, how do I get like from here to the moon? He's not doing that.
Of course not.
It's becoming cheap. Exactly. Yes, I know.
But Prime. Here's the thing.
It becoming cheaper. So that was my point. You're arguing something different, and that's fine. But that's not what I was arguing. So
yeah, I agree. We're all building on the shoulders of giants. But Prime, you have to understand, like, in the most charitable end result of your argument here is that the government did a bunch of shit, but now they're obsolete.
No, okay. So I would say that it was lack of government investment that led to that stuff, but okay. But I'll let Corey
the most charitable representation is they were doing it good before, but now they couldn't do it.
Sure. Okay. Corey goes first, and then Scott can lose his fucking shit on me. Go ahead.
I believe you're making a false equivalency, Lactoid, in terms of like. So, okay, are you saying that the accomplishments of SpaceX are comparable to NASA? Like, so what are the actual accomplishments of SpaceX? Can you outline them for me?
NASA's existed for so much longer. NASA's had way more access to resources.
Yes.
What I'm saying is, all I'm saying is,
so you would no. Can I say? So you would agree then? Like you're making the argument that SpaceX has matched NASA.
On a dollar per dollar basis, they've exceeded.
You're going down the economic lane. Oh, they just reduced costs. So what?
No. So what I'm saying is on a dollar per dollar basis for the amount of time.
Economic analysis, yes.
Yes, because resources matters when we're talking about investing into certain projects, okay? When we're talking about like investing in a space flight, the amount of money it takes to launch a kilogram of material into space matters because we're talking about launching satellites.
Gone to the moon. Has SpaceX gone to the moon?
I admitted to you already.
So it's a false equivalency. You're
I'm saying
the economic lane.
Let me finish. Okay, so NASA's been around for way longer. They have had way more access to resources. However, for 3 decades, from 1970 to the 2000, right? Like the cost of spaceflight has remained stagnant, right? Even beyond that, it's remained stagnant. It's been increasingly expensive to launch shit into space, okay? And then you have SpaceX come into play, okay? Now, has SpaceX existed as long as NASA? Obviously not. Do they have the resources of the entire American people trying to fuck over the Soviets? Obviously not. That being said, they were still able to reduce the cost of spaceflight by more than a factor of 10. That doesn't.
So they've gone to the moon.
And for some reason, I'm not saying they went to the moon. I'm saying that they've made things more efficient, and they're trying to get to Mars, something that NASA hasn't been able to do since its founding. Like in terms of putting a man on the Mars.
You're pretty much agreeing with that. It's a false equivalency because yes, NASA has a longer
I'm
history.
just saying Elon Musk is okay to admire. That's my only argument this whole time.
Nothing that SpaceX has done, except for your like limited niche example of like just sending whatever random things to space, then yes, we've cut corners there. But NASA has way more accomplishments, and maybe as a result of them focusing on so many other things, like developing, I don't know, going to the moon and all the technology and all whatever the spacecraft involved with that, maybe as a result of focusing on all those other things, that cost couldn't come down when it came to this like very niche aspect.
Wait, 1 second. A niche aspect?
1 second.
The whole
SpaceX. So SpaceX, they figured out how to make the actual ship that goes up reusable. They figured out how to allow it to be reused. That is an innovation in space. They may have not made it. Okay, but they may have not made it to the moon, but it's still not a false equivalency. NASA was also trying to go to space. They only made it to the moon, as far as I'm tracking, once, right?
Wait, right? No, there's been several missions.
That's not
several expeditions to the moon. Okay,
yeah, it's irrelevant. Who cares if they did or not?
Whatever. So past. Okay. Can you give me 1 second? Can you give me a second then? So past going to the moon, they haven't tried. They haven't tried to go to the moon again. Those exhibitions have since halted. And SpaceX is obviously not trying to go to the moon either. And so to try and like pin down SpaceX by have they made it to the moon, that right there is a false equivalency. You're trying to set a goalpost that no one's even aiming at.
Blacktoy brought it up. He goes down this.
I didn't bring up the moon.
No,
what I'm saying is that SpaceX was able to do this when the government could not.
And SpaceX is subsidized by the government.
It's not over
they take contracts from the government. Right? I understand it seems literally $1 billion in subsidies. It's going to get, like, for instance, for the Space Link project it's going to create, that's going to be subsidized by the government by $900 million. Yeah, it's subsidized by the fucking government as well, right? And to say, sorry. My only point has been I admire Elon Musk.
Just real quick.
That's my only point was saying Elon Musk was able to do this. Am I wrong?
All right.
Am I wrong that Elon Musk was able to do this where other people failed? Yes or no?
Sure.
So I'm okay to admire him as an entrepreneur who did some good shit, right?
Like some sort of moral good, right? And you said
he has done a moral good.
No, how? No, okay, all right. That's a different disagreement. I want to give.
Going to Mars isn't a moral good. Launching spaceflight is not a moral good.
He hasn't gone to Mars.
He's trying.
He's trying to go to Mars.
He's made it closer than other people have.
Go to Mars, or whatever, right? But he hasn't gone to Mars. So don't say he's gone to Mars. But like whatever. There's a larger conversation on Elon Musk. Oh my God, I'm sorry, we went
lowering the cost of spaceflight.
But I gotta give Scott a chance to respond. So Scott, please.
Yeah, so I was trying to debunk your bullshit earlier, and you would not allow me to do it because you're a fucking coward. But you know what? I'm glad you pulled your pants up and you're finally able to take the ass whooping you're about to get. So 2 things. Number 1, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of basic economics when you say that because in a historical past, the government funded something, which they didn't do with their own money that they made. They did it by taking money from the American taxpayer out of the economy, out of the purchasing power, reducing GDP and investing it in NASA. That means, and you said that it could not have been done without the government's involvement in NASA. That is a bullshit historical argument and like a fucking freshman in high school that understands economics understands that it could have been done by other things. You don't have a crystal ball, right? Second, you said that it was the government that was doing these things. Well, see, the problem is when you talk about that, you should probably before you make really strong statements, you should probably know what the fuck you're talking about. Because IBM's data processing system, the 790, was done completely without any government subsidies and without any government involvement whatsoever. And the government asked them and said, hey, we're trying to find somebody that will buy one if somebody can come up with one that's twice as good. They did not win the contract and get any money from the government until they had already manufactured and produced the 794. So who was it that actually started the entire program? It was IBM, not NASA. Without IBM, without getting any government money, unless you want to talk about like some money that they kind of got from the university system. And then at that point, we're talking about free market capitalism versus. I see that you're yelling over me in your chat because you're such a fucking pussy
I'm not
that you
yelling
can't actually
over
let
you.
my
I've been
arguments
muted.
wreck
Now I'm
your
not
shit.
muted, and now I'm talking over you. I wasn't talking to anyone. No one heard me say anything because I was
Well, then
fucking
who the fuck are you
muted.
screaming at you, the
Because
void?
I was being unlike you, fucking Scott, right? I was being charitable and giving you space, right? And not talking over you. I wasn't doing any of that. I was pantomiming, right? My amusement at your dumbass fucking points. Now, here we go. You can go again, right? But once again, I wasn't talking over you. Now, please proceed.
No,
Just
they're
admit
good.
Elon's
That's all the
great.
information you
That's
need.
all I wanna know.
You don't understand economics, and you don't understand the way that private industry was involved before NASA's money, and that they built themselves off of the backs of private industry.
So the story you're telling me is that in IBM, at IBM, they built this, right, to get a government contract.
They built the 790 without the government contract.
No.
They built a better
But the government
system
made a contract.
hoping to get a government contract.
Yes, hoping to get a government contract. So the government
Yes.
put out there is money to be
Someone
had,
was going
right?
to buy
And
something,
if-
so they made
and
something
if-
better.
Yeah, and exactly, right? So, hey,
How could a university or private company not have offered them the same deal?
There is money out there, people, right? And if you create a product, you will get this money. Now, meaning
can we-
that the
Prime.
government
You're a fucking
inspired the
bootlicker.
You know,
creation
I think
of
it's
that
really
product,
beautiful
right?
bootlicker.
It was
Prime.
how much you
subsidies,
guys
right?
all love
Wait,
space
wait.
so much.
Prime,
I
Prime,
also
Prime.
love space.
Prime, could
Maybe
you-
at the end we can share what each other's star signs are as well, since we just love space so much. You guys are so
Prime.
passionate.
There's a lot of
I-
these people
I'm
would like to send
passionate
us
about
space.
Wait.
spending.
Prime.
You guys all must be
Prime, would you
Leos or
would you agree?
something.
Would you agree with me, Prime, that like if we took your logic like down its logical like down the road, we could I could show, well, here's a company like headed by somebody who did something way better, and you could say, well, before then, like the government did something better, and then Scott can disagree and say, well, actually, like a company did that, and then what you could say is, well, all the engineers at that private company were all educated by like a public high school, which we all like the government put money into, and like you could always take it a step back,
No.
and you could always
All I'm
get the
saying
government,
is
you could always get the government.
No.
Hold
All
on,
I'm
you
saying
could always
is
get the government.
subsidize.
Well, right. The government does subsidize all
Yes.
engineers in this
That's a
country
lie. That's
by
not all you're
by
saying.
by
That's a
virtue
lie.
of them paying
Exactly.
for their
You
high
said that
school,
it
right?
could not be
Yes.
done
So
without
so
the
so
Can I
government.
just check?
right,
Factoid?
but hold on.
Factoid?
Hold
Factoid.
on.
What?
I'm in the middle of a
Sorry,
point.
just one second. What is your date of birth?
I don't want to dox give myself my fucking
Oh,
my
just
social
month.
security
Okay,
number
month
too.
of birth. Are you at the beginning or the end of
It's
the month?
July. This month is my birthday, so you guys be
Early
nice to
July?
me. This is my birthday month, and you.
I
all
just
should
want
be
to figure
nice
out your star sign. I'm just going to do something useful. while
Okay,
you
yeah,
guys
that's
all
fine.
fight.
I'm a boar in terms of the Chinese circle or whatever. But Prime,
That's
what
our
I'm
Star signs are bullshit, as shown by my behavior as a Libra.
what I'm saying.
You're very balanced.
What I'm saying is, Prime, is that like the initial disagreement came up in terms of like I was saying that someone like Elon Musk should be like granted some level of credit here, and I admire him as an entrepreneur and an engineer for being able to accomplish things that I think are relatively important in American society, such as inventing better ways to do electric cars and ways to dramatically reduce the cost of spaceflight in order to make it commercially viable. Now, your response to that could be, well, is he better than NASA? And like, to be fair, I'm not sure you said this specifically. Maybe this was like a sort of like argument I had with Corey, right? But what I'm saying is that like, I agree that NASA had like a totally different role. They had a totally different budget. They had a totally different like, they were in the context of the Cold War, it was completely different. None of this detracts from the argument that Elon Musk is a very impressive individual for being able to come into the field of spaceflight and reduce the cost of launching spacecraft into space by a factor of more than 10. This is an incredibly important achievement, and the fact that like for some reason there's something like wrong with us admiring him from doing this because he like borrowed from spacecraft from NASA. It doesn't make any sense.
No. My specific issue with you was that like this idea of attaching moral good to it. You said leftists separate those things from wealth, right? Like, and I think that makes sense. Well, that's what my specific thing. But you can admire whoever the fuck you want.
Let me follow that up. I will make the positive argument that advancing electric vehicles that is a moral good because it lowers the overall environmental impact of people overall driving and transportation. I will say that reducing the cost of spaceflight is a moral good because I morally value like being able to explore the universe and being able to potentially like colonize Mars one day or putting satellites into space and reducing the cost of expenses for everyday people. These are good things that we can do. And so I would attribute some kind of moral goodness. And Elon Musk, for being able to be the person who did this, is doing a moral good for society. Like just like Henry Ford was doing a good thing by providing the Model T to American citizens and to the whole world. Like people for some reason detached. Like just because you have a personal just because you have a personal interest in something doesn't mean what you're doing is not morally good. You're doing amazing things for society. Are you personally profiting? Of course, that's the point of a company. Of course you can profit and also be morally good. It's a good thing. It's American capitalism. That's why America's great.
And that's okay. So that's a larger conversation. I'll let Corey finish us off, and we'll move on.
I would just push back on this notion of like if you want to sort of frame it as the moral good is like if in the end Elon succeeds and all combustion engine cars are replaced with electric cars, I wouldn't consider that a moral good. I would say that's more this concept of like every single person in the United States needs a car is largely driven by poor city infrastructure and poor public transportation. And that's only generally speaking in rural areas do you need a car.
Oh my God.
Since this hyper individualistic society where one person, one giant sedan, that's totally unnecessary, and with better city planning and infrastructure, Elon Musk wouldn't have a business model.
Elon Musk can't
Y'all
go
are making me agree with you.
Hold
This
on.
is bad.
No, this is ridiculous, right? Elon Musk as an individual can't go in and change the city infrastructure of every fucking city.
Talk about America.
It is a moral good for him to invent electric vehicles.
We gotta move on. All right, look, we ran out of time.
It's less climate change. I thought we cared about climate change.
We ran out of time.
The people in the Maldives, they're drowning, and you're causing them to drown by criticizing Elon Musk.
Yo, I fucking love when Lactoid drinks. Lactoid, you're my new drinking buddy.
The foreign people are dying, and
just says base capitalist shit when he gets drinking. Let's go.
I love Lactoid too. Lactoid's a great guy. All right, so we're gonna continue on. We're open walk on panel. This has been a lot of fun. Guys, the content does not end here. We always have more content for you. We'll have a space, right, where we can argue more about this. If Scott is brave enough, I don't know, maybe he could challenge me there and, to lose once again, take another L in front of his audience. But we'll see. But anyway, other people, if you guys want to join,
I'm a large enough streamer. I don't have to deal with your den of like 9v1 from a bunch of stupid ass fucking wannabe Marxists that don't know half of their shit, that sit in your fucking chat mauling mad that they can't fucking debate me on a platform because they don't have the fucking clout to do it. I'm gonna get out of here like I always do after these. And if you want to fucking debate me, get better.
Well, he did call himself a coward earlier.
He did indeed. Scott, you are as sweet and as gentle a soul as you always are. So thank you so much. But guys, if you've been enjoying this content, if you just discovered it, right, and you liked, me losing my shit at my guests, right? If that's the thing that you enjoy, I do that often, right? So you should come back, hit that follow button right now, make sure notifications on so you know when I'm going live. Do this 6 days a week. Exclamation social and chat for our social media. We got a whole lot of it. We got Twitter where we tweet things. I forgot the tweets. Okay. Discord where we do everything, including our more panel, which will be happening right after this. So if you want to join us for that, if you want to be a part of this conversation, jump in there. Right, we'd love to have you. TikTok is where you'll find amusing videos from this channel, and YouTube is where you find the VODs. If you missed any of this, right? If you missed any of me like dominating my guests intellectually, right, and sexually, then you will find that on YouTube. Like, comment, and subscribe. Consider becoming a YouTube member, hitting that join button, and supporting us that way if you like this content 7 days a week. All right, I am going to give an outro to all these guests, but the content does not end. Stick around. We have more for you. All right. We'll start. We'll start with Wick. All right. We'll start with Wick, and we're gonna go counterclockwise. All right. So Wick, thank you for being here and always being ready to fight, buddy.
Look, there's so much to fight against, right? I get it from both sides in a lot of cases. I want to thank you first of all for allowing me to come on your platform and to play my crazy old Uncle Wick persona for the 4th of July, where America and freedom, reign supreme. And I think we've demonstrated that we've, we beat the fascists once, we'll beat them again. We beat the communists once, we'll beat them again. All these extreme positions. But in all seriousness, I do host a weekly show. Tuesdays, we have open call-in, so that'll be tomorrow. It should be really fun. Thursdays, I have one-on-one interviews with different people. I think this week we're going to be talking to Sleeve T Rocks, who's a great guy, so we're going to have him on and talk to him about all sorts of things. And then Friday, we're having a panel on drug legalization and how that works. Has it worked out in the areas that they've legalized weed? Like there are reports out of California that maybe not. So we're going to discuss this, right? And it should be fun. Stardust is going to be there, and we're going to have a lot of big names. So buckle in, gang. But yeah, you can find me at twitch.tv/deathofcertainty, and where we always remember, no matter how right we think we are, we might be wrong. That's me. Thank you. Happy 4th of July. God bless America. Hallelujah. There we are.
I had actually one quick question for you. Does Kaylee still work with you? Is she still your lovely
yeah. As far as I know, she's been busy the last couple of weeks. I've had a guest thing, but usually she's there. As far as I know, unless she quit on me and I don't know about it.
Oh no, I was curious because I
on my open call-in show, on my open call-in show, I usually have a co-host who's usually the lovely Kaylee Marie. You know her, you love her. She's great. So come on by and see us. So.
Thank you so much, everyone. Check them out. Link is in chat. Okay. Next we have.
Oh wait, and also I have a GoFundMe. Can I link that in your chat?
Yes,
too?
please.
For my tooth. Yeah, like gang, I one of my veneers fell out. I have another one that was put in the same time. It's gonna go soon too. Gonna need some money. If you can help, great. Thank you. That's all.
Yes, I'll put that GoFundMe in chat. Please help out our friend Wick, who's been just a great part of our community. So yeah, he needs us in this time of need. All right. So next we'll go to Scott, right? Like I say this all the time. I say my friend Scott, right? And I mean it because I like him, right? You might think otherwise, but actually I do like talking to Scott. So Scott, thank you seriously for coming through and being so lively as you always are. You add a lot to this community, so thanks so much.
No, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It's fun. It's fun on the Mondays where I'm not busy to come in here and yell at some lefties, get yelled. It was a pretty balanced panel tonight. Usually it's like me versus like 7 lefties, and they're like, well, I'm a center right, and it's like, you're a fucking leftist. All right. But no, I really do appreciate it. I am Fabian Liberty. Well, I'm half of Fabian Liberty. Scott. We're a duo, anarcho-capitalist stream. We do a lot of news, we do a lot of reactions, we do a lot of breakdowns, a lot of philosophy readings, well, twice a month. Serial killer night once a month. We do a lot of interviews. Tomorrow we will be interviewing Dr. Walter Block, famous Austrian economist, and the person, along with one other, Roy, that created the evictionism argument from libertarianism. That is the only argument that I've heard thus far, other than maybe departurism, but I'm not getting into that. On that maintains a woman's right to choose, as well as the fact that abortion is murder. So it should be really cool. If you have economic questions or anything like that, stop by and get your questions ready. That'll be at 8. Circling back to the panel, the actual thing that the not so erudite was trying to talk about before we screamed about space. I want to leave. Sometimes I like to leave with a quote. So I want to leave a quote from Thomas Jefferson, since we were talking about our founding fathers so much and talking about economic conditions changing. I think it's a great quote by Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers. Quote, "If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered."
You're here. I agree with that part. Yeah, actually, that's a good quote. Let's go. I'll move on to our other friend, Lactoid. Lactoid, you're a fantastic part of this. I'm so glad I found you. Like, we found you during the whole the thing we did, the competition type thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you were like the best part of that. Like, finding you. You're a great participant. So thank you for keep coming back and arguing with us, with these socialists, like, who need to be educated by you, honestly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. First of all, huge shout out to you, Prime. Thank you so much for discovering me and bringing me on these panels. I think you've done the world a service. I appreciate that. I think everyone here, because Prime has been so amazing at bringing me on, I highly do recommend you subscribe to him and you encourage this behavior, right? Market incentives, as we know, bring the best change of the world. So give him a market incentive to continue bringing me on. I think that's a good thing. And so you can find me. I'm Lactoid, Anti-Communism United, also known as. You can find me on Twitch under Anti-Communism United. You can find me on Discord, Anti-Communism United. Please join. Anyone who wants to discuss anything, please do. I'm going to end on I guess a more serious note about my love for this great experiment that is known as the United States of America. Right? You know, it is great men and great women that turn the wheel of history, that make things happen. You know, the people like John Rockefeller, Henry Ford, the Wright brothers, Elon Musk, right? And it's no accident that people as amazing and fantastic and exceptional as this come from the United States of America, right? This country, and I say this as a dual citizen, right? The United States is the best fucking country. Every other country is like a little sub. They don't know what's up. Like, this country's amazing. It's incredible. Happy birthday, America. Fuck yeah, 4th of July. Canadians, if you want to move here, I will accept you. Thank you.
That's right. That's right. Right. Those geniuses ain't come from Canada. Ain't come from Canada. Saying that. Anyway, let's go to our friend Eucharist. Eucharist, another conservative, right? The best kind, honestly, really the pinnacle of them all. Eucharist, thank you for for being here. You were quieter today because we weren't talking about child murder, I guess.
Yeah, well, also because like I just don't yell enough, right? So when people are yelling, I just
loud
let them yell.
And
Yeah,
you go to your corner. Oh no. Go ahead.
Yeah. I write out everything I would have said. So if you ever want to know what I would have said, I'll let you know. But yeah, I'm going to use my closing time really quickly to blackpill you all on corn, because corn is the reason we have lost the American dream. Okay, we subsidize corn to the point where we overproduce it. I'm going to skip the environmental impact, okay, the fact that we strip the soil bare of nutrients and we have to use horrific fertilizers with awful runoff consequences. Okay, I'm going to skip that, all right? I want to deal with the other stuff. Overproducing it combined with the subsidies that benefit long-distance shipping makes corn byproducts far cheaper than they ought to be. So we find ourselves in a situation where, one, we feed corn to cows that aren't made to eat corn. They don't digest it as well as grass, which gives us worse quality meat, which is why some nations with higher per capita consumption of red meat don't have as high rates of heart disease as we do. Part of why. Two, we use corn to overproduce alcohol, such that corn byproduct spirits and beer are just disgustingly cheap. I can be as poor as I want, and I can get absolutely trashed every single night on a liter or more of corn-based alcohol. Three, we use corn as a sweetener and a filler to cheapen food that is actively worse for us, so our ridiculous system of agriculture subsidies has created a food system that is reliant on those subsidies continuing, but also incentivizes habits, practices, and production practices that harm us. Corn is the enemy. It has ruined the American dream. I am Eucharist. I've actually recently started streaming again. My first stream back, I was looking at conservatives in academia and conservatism as a concept. So I'm hoping to do kind of a series going through major conservative thinkers, trying to look at what conservatism is historically and how maybe we've moved away from it in the American right and the right in other places currently. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can follow me and yell at me about it.
I agree, Eucharist. Fuck corn and the green energy revolution and all of the government money that's been given to the corn industry and large corporations. Fucking over poor people and destroying their farms and taxing them out of existence to further consolidate them into large corporations to fuck over our diet.
True. Eucharist is only speaking truth here, right? Thanks so much. All right. Let's go to Corey Campbell. Corey Campbell, thank you as well for being a part of this, right? I like when you get animated, Corey, right? Like, because you're an understated guy, so when you get animated, it's a lot of fun. So thanks so much for being here, buddy.
Yeah, super grateful to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation, and also grateful to be on the panel with everyone else. Doobie, Spartacus, Eucharist, Lactoid, Scott, always a pleasure. Wick, always a pleasure, and Erudite, always a pleasure. And I can totally get on board with Eucharist's anti-corn manifesto. I sign off on that, and I look forward to its full publication.
Are you also grateful for America?
Absolutely not. No. Geographically, Canada's the top, US is the bottom. And so I'll end with circling it back to, I guess, the original question, nationalism. I'll just wrap it up and bring in something that Eucharist brought up in terms of Socrates. I think Socrates kind of exemplifies the distinction between nationalism versus patriotism. I would characterize Socrates as a patriot and not a nationalist. Socrates loved Athens. As far as if I remember correctly, he pretty much never left Athens except to go to war. And yet he was deeply critical of pretty much the entire fabric of society of Athens. But he was more than willing to die for its principles, for its laws. Even when given the offer to leave and go into exile, he's like, what's the point? I think that type of patriotism is healthy, and putting your country or nation on a pedestal, probably unhealthy. And I will end with earlier, Doobie was, I think, advocating for transcending animal instincts or animal nature. I just find it funny that he's doing that as a frog. And I'll stop there.
If you can intelligently use Socrates or Plato in a thought, then you're automatically Eucharist's best friend, right? He loves you so much.
I would, if you ever want to have a
Hell
conversation
yeah.
about Socrates.
This is the most we've ever agreed, Corey. I'm loving it. I hate cars. You like Socrates. Like, this is great. All right, let's go.
All right. Next we have our boy Spartacus. Spartacus, I get pumped when Spartacus comes on, right? You have a positivity about you, right? That's kind of infectious. So and I really mean that. So it hypes up the panel for me. So thank you for being here, Spartacus.
Hey, I appreciate the invite. I find it very abhorrent that Scott, Eucharist, and Corey are statists and they just hate Hoosier farmers. They grow the corn. They just take it out on the corn, and they just want those farmers to be poor and live on the streets as bums. And I find that absolutely disgusting. To add on to that, Canada may be geographically on top, but if you run to a Canadian, they're going to turn around, say sorry, and ask if you want a donut. Okay, so it's pretty clear there. But other than that, you can find me at twitch.tv/thespartacus and twitter.com/thespartacus.
Okay, thank you. All right, next we have our Dark Lord and Savior. His name is Doobie. Doobie, thank you for being part of this, and always like a fantastic participant, always. So I appreciate you. And Doobie, we'd love to have you in the open walk on panel because I know you have things to say that you didn't get a chance to because Scott triggered me. So if you want to do that, that'd be great. Also,
you talking about? You muted me for like 15 minutes, bro.
And even
you had
your
plenty of
fucking
time.
face triggers me. And also I'll give you more space to talk about your batshit insane government. So Doobie, please.
Yeah, that's okay. I was actually confirming a few things, server related, while all that ring was going on. So given that everybody's chilling their shit, I guess I should always forget to. So I run the politics server on Discord, right? And we have a ton of shit coming up this month and next month. So starting with, on the 22nd, we'll have author, activist, March for Life organizer, Turning Point USA ambassador, and founder of Relationships Matter, Tony McFadden, on the server. Tony had an accidental pregnancy when she was a teenage girl. She had that baby murdered at an abortion clinic. Since then, she's dedicated her life to ensuring that other young Black women aren't taken in by the historically racist abortion industry and pressured to murder their babies. She'll be visiting us on the 22nd, like I said, for an AMA, so that'll be interesting. On July 24th, we'll have Jewish scholar Rabbi Ney on the server. He will be visiting my extremely Jew-friendly community to take questions about the Jewish religion. And I have a soft confirmation right now, so I don't want to be too firm about this. Soft confirmation that Donald Trump Jr. will be on the server on Friday, this Friday. Not a firm confirmation yet. Soft, We're like 80% of the way there, right? But I have a firm confirmation that Michael Flynn will be on the server in August. So next month, we'll have Michael Flynn on. We are the best and biggest politics server on the Discord platform. If you're not there, you're a head-ass bitch. You'll die alone, and nobody's going to remember you. And also, I'm being interviewed by NPR. I think it's like All Things Considered at some point next month. So that'll be interesting. And yeah, discord.gg/politics. And I will be on the open panel.
Okay. Wow.
Jesus, the flex. Jesus Christ.
Right. Doobie is doing big things. Especially Doobie in chat. If you want the link to his politics Discord server, check him out. Right? Yeah, and huge things are happening. I was there.
Just make sure you turn notifications off.
Oh yeah, you should do that.
I do like to ping the server to piss everybody off. So yeah, turn them off if you're.
Hey Prime. Hey
like
Prime. When are you
60,000
planning?
people.
When are you planning on having Donald Trump Jr. on a panel like this?
If I could ever convince them, holy shit, yes. Oh my God.
I would love to interact with that man. I have so many things to say.
But Doobie is blowing up, guys. You got to be hitting up Doobie. Doobie, I was there when he had his Buck Angel conversation. It was actually a really good one. So if you missed that one, well, you're missing out on all kinds of great things happening on Politics Discord server. So you should definitely check it out. I'm actually super excited. I'd like to be a part of anything that's going on there. So thanks so much, Doobie. And also, our friend Boji is being very insistent that you do the feats. Okay. All right. So moving on. Look, last greatest. We have our friend Erudite. Erudite is simply put the best way to start your day, right? And you'd be doubly lucky if you could end your day with her. So Erudite, thank you. Thank you for making us lucky. For allowing me to get lucky tonight. Erudite, I really.
We'll see.
Way to make sure she never comes back, weirdo.
Erudite, you're fantastic. And I liked when you got fired up too. Near the end there, so that was a lot of fun. So thank you for agreeing to come on. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me. To end the panel, I would like to share with you all a very short story, if that is okay. It's like a paragraph long, like max. Okay.
Fucking Scott goes on for fucking ever. Yes, you can take an hour.
Yeah. Okay, so when I was a young boy, my father, he took me into the city to see a marching band. And he said, "Son, when you grow up, would you be the savior of the broken, the beaten,
I didn't know you were trans,
and the damned?" And he said, "Will you defeat them, your demons, and all the non-believers?" All right, that's it. That's what I get.
Karaoke stream.
The plans that they have made.
The Black Parade
plans
is
that they have
actually one of the
made,
best rock opera albums ever made. And most people don't even know it's a rock
gotta
opera.
be black.
Just FYI.
Prime, I forgot my book recommendation.
And also,
I'm really sad.
Erudite, I'm a Leo. Just FYI.
So is Lactoid.
And a dragon.
I'm not a Leo. I'm a Cancer.
That's even worse.
I prefer to go by the Chinese zodiac because it says I'm a dragon. But I'll go with Leo.
Ooh, I'm jealous.
Pig. I'm a pig according to the Chinese calendar.
Whatever you do tonight, don't drive Star Spangled Hammered.
Love it. Yukesh, you want to say something?
Oh, I just forgot my book recommendation. So as long as we're arguing about the American Revolution and the principles that it did or didn't have, there's a really good book that came out a couple of years ago by C. Bradley Thompson, who's a professor at Clemson. He is conservative, just so you know, but it's called America's Revolutionary Mind, A Moral History of the American Revolution. It's a really excellent book. It outlines some of the things that Scott was talking about, some things people in the chat were saying about, well, actually, there's some Republican influence as well, yada, yada, kind of sketches out like the major shift in principles that happens in the American Revolution and how that leads to some of the things that we all really like now. So
I would just also like to say one thing to the audience. I can tell you with authority as a lawyer, drinking and driving is against the law. Please find a ride if you are drunk and you are at a bar. It's America's birthday. No reason to spend it in jail.
Don't drive
Star
Spangled
at a
Hammered.
bar.
They're on their phone.
I don't fucking know,
the
dude.
best bar in
I
the
don't know.
United States.
It's for sure. Debate board. I believe you. Debate board.
Like,
Debate board is at
I'm just-
home.
I'm
No, wait.
imagining like some Hell's Angels bar, and there's like just a bunch of tough dudes and bikers, and there's like one dude over there slowly getting blue pilled, just like in the corner, like if only they knew, but I can't look away. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing over there? Oh, nothing. Swipe.
No. Prime. See what happens is PrimeCayes pays his local bar to play his streams at night, and so whenever his local bar, whatever's closest to his house, is always playing the streams when he's on.
Absolutely. Look, man, I got to get my name out there somewhere, and I'm reaching all kinds of audiences everywhere. All right. But seriously, thank you to all of you. This has been great. This is actually a really fun conversation. We are going to continue on to a more on panel. Any of you can join us, but if not, that's okay. Thanks for spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion so much with my audience. I know they appreciate it just as much as I do. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
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 Thanks, Prime.
All right, Prime.